Hey everybody, welcome to Walla. You're looking at the planning committee of the 2020 reunion, which became the planning committee of the 2021 reunion and turned into the 2022 reunion. So the three of us, Mike Hamilton, Mike Miller, and I, have been working on this for 3 years, and we hope you enjoy it.
I want to thank five class of 69 brothers who helped the three of us, and we had Zoom meetings almost, every other week or so in planning this. So I'd like to thank Bruce McEachran, Doug Kerr, Pete Johnson, Steve Llewellyn, and Dan Rothrock for their efforts. Could we give a hand to that?
We're actually going to go with a way back time machine to start out here. And so I'm going to ask Steve Llewellyn to come up. He was in the first pledge class of the new house in 1964.
Thanks, guys. I'd also like to welcome everybody. It's wonderful to see so many, I'm not going to say old faces, but faces from the past, let's say. So again, I'm Steve Llewellyn. I graduated from WSU in 1968. I was really privileged to be a member of the first pledge class, and just as a little bit of background about my coming into the DU house, a good close friend of mine, Kurt Hysaw, and I had come down to do a recruiting track trip to meet with the coach, WSU track coach. And my brother, who was a year older, had pledged DU in 1963. And he and all the other members of the DU house were staying over in Rogers Hall while the new fraternity was being built. And so we stayed over in Rogers Hall, quite an experienced couple of high school green behind the ear guys, staying in a big dormitory where there's probably 600 people, all men, because later it became some women and some men. We met the DU fraternity brothers, and they kind of, I think, in a sense, early rushed Kurt and me. I would like to think that they liked us for us, not the fact that my brother was kind of brilliant and got very, very high grades. And maybe they were thinking that Kurt and I were some kind of major league scholars or something. Anyway, we met them, and we were really welcomed by guys like Rich Brothers, who we had known from East Valley High School, was the house president, Orv Varner, the hard, heavy-handed treasurer, Ellis Russo, and a bunch of other really, really nice guys. And Kurt and I asked a lot of questions because we didn't know too much about fraternities, and found out that DU was founded on non-secrecy, no hazing, and really respect for every brother. And we liked the sounds of that, because later on we'd had another chance to come down to Pullman later in the spring to go to a track meet, and stayed over at the Phi Delt house. And things were really a lot different. It was pretty chaotic, and kind of half scary. We're thinking, holy, we were non-drinkers, blah, 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 in 1964. And we thought, I'm not sure I like the looks of this Phi Delt house. In any event, we probably were kind of snap pledged by the DUs, committed to, we're going to become DU, we like this, without seeing any other fraternities other than the chaotic Phi Delt house. And so we asked about the house, of course, so you have a place? Yeah. And so they took us over, and we actually got to go in and see the house under construction. It was pretty well done, but the kitchen wasn't done. And in fact, I pulled a picture out of the old yearbook, 1964 fall. They didn't even have a sign out in front. They had a big white cardboard thing which said Delta Upsilon printed with like a marker of some kind. So a little bit primitive, but they guaranteed us they would have a sign ultimately. So come fall, we came down to Rush. Kurt and I ran into Bob Daly, who we knew from track, at state track. Met Doug Damrose, valedictorian from a 16-person class in Craigmont, Idaho. And he turned out to be the most amazing person I've ever known. But in any event, you know, Don Phillips and a bunch of the old pledges, and I think ultimately, well, the kitchen wasn't finished at the DU house, so we had meals over in the Lutheran Church off of Stadium Way, on the uphill part of Stadium Way. You know, they were rushing the guys, and I think maybe 13 or 14 about that pledged, and a bunch of others came in during that first year. You all know how many came in during that first year of 1964. So we've got several here, yeah, Altamary and Jerry and a bunch of you guys. And so the house wasn't full, and I think in the picture in this yearbook there were 42 guys. And the house held 64, which later we did have 64. I think looking back on it, the thing that impressed us most was not a new house, although that was certainly impressive to move into, but it was the guys, how they welcomed us, and it was kind of the spirit I felt, and Kurt did too, as we talked about it on the way back to Spokane. Those guys are really nice guys. I mean, they seem to sincerely like us. We're going to let them think that we're major league scholars. But, you know, and that kind of spirit, I think, went on for the next 4 years that I was in the house, and only our second semester senior year, to escape the fraternity a little bit, Doug Damrose and Larry Howard and I rented an apartment up in the Anthony Apartments up on the hill. Yeah, but otherwise was in the house for 3.5 years. And so you can imagine how much it delights me that there's an effort to get the house going again and fill it with, you know, new DUs. So in any event, that's my kind of first year. It was very enjoyable. I knew nothing, but just jumped into it like we had hoped to. So I loved it. Great decision to become a DU, and so I hope y'all who are members feel the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, very much. And now we're going to go to Bruce McEachran, who's going to talk about the house with 64 people in it. And I've been warned, Bruce, that I cannot get between you and a microphone. It's dangerous. So I'm going to leave and you can come up. Okay, good.
I'm Bruce McEachran. I'm here to take you back to the fall of '65 when our pledge class, I think we were 24 strong that joined the fraternity or joined the pledge class in late August or September of '65. We picked up a few throughout the year and eventually became 26 or 27 strong. Filled the house. The reasons we joined varied immensely, but Steve covered the basics. Everybody was very friendly, very respectful of the pledges, of themselves. And I'm going to refer to something here shortly, thanks to Pete Johnson, who saved an original pledge manual that went through everything we had to adhere to. And it was a mess. So thank you, Pete. Excuse me 1 second. Old Gold and Blue Pledge Manual. This goes through, and it's a mimeograph and faded, so I had trouble reading it, but this goes through pretty much everything. The history of DU at Washington State, the history of the campus itself, being a land-grant university. But what I want to get to is what we learned as pledges from this. Respect each other and respect the property. We were on KP on this. That's yours truly on the right and Al Johnson on the left. AMO, And then Lanny is poking over the top of Emil.
Randy was on KP 2 hours after you guys were done.
If nothing, we weren't efficient, yes. But we had duties, everything in the house had to be cleaned every day. And once a week, it was mopped and waxed. So we respected where we were. We were encouraged to get involved, not only with fraternity, with the campus, with intramurals. This is one of the best basketball teams that ever came out of Delta Upsilon. I have no idea if we won anything. I have no idea if we ever played a game. I mean, this is 57 years ago, folks. And memories fade and you create memories. But we have Leach and Treat, myself, Weathers, Al Johnson, Elmo, Lord, Rocks, Doug Kerr, and yeah, I know that, I think it's Eckert and then Cleves. Eckert and Cleves there. They said, you know, get involved as long as it doesn't interfere with studies. I signed up for 34 different intramural events. And it didn't interfere with my studies. I didn't study. But we had fun. And we were encouraged as a group to come together and kind of create a project for the house and create something that would be forever there. And so, I'm sorry, we couldn't find these letters. And we heard that somebody might have them or know where they are. But our class created letters. McCracken and Horde brought them over on a train. You can imagine these things 4 or 5 feet tall on there. It was tough duty for them, but they got it over, and here we have Rocks on the bottom and Treat on the left, Mike Moore, Horde on top, and the Groin on the right. It was a doggone good ladder. Doggone good ladder. I was a legacy. Although my dad never pushed me in any way, he was a DU, graduated in '36. He was one of the early ones to join DU after Psi Nu Sigma. And my uncle was a Psi Nu Sigma. And I just so happen to have the 1929 petition to DU to accept Psi Nu Sigma on Washington State. This didn't go through then. They tried, I think it was 13 years to petition for membership into Delta Upsilon. And hopefully I'm not stepping on somebody's talk down the road. But since I'm a legacy, I had these. I was looking through the men who are listed on this one, and I came across the name of Ellsworth Kanzler. Kanzler, ring a bell? Okay. In talking with Denny, his dad's name was Ellsworth, but it wasn't the same Ellsworth. This guy was 22, his dad was like 13 at that time. So he's going to check through his genealogy and find out. I also have up here the blueprints for the house in 1956, the old house. It was torn down in '63. I also have blueprints for the new house. And you're welcome to come up and look at them and stuff. This is our alumni charter for Washington State University. Spokane Delta Upsilon Alumni Club. So I don't know, I mean, basically it's carried through. That's about it. I encourage you to look at what we have here. There are pictures in the back. There's a memory wall that Steve Llewellyn put together for past brothers, deceased brothers. And take a look at the other things, and I'm glad to answer any questions, but I don't want to just ramble or have somebody get hurt trying to get between me and a mic. So thank you again.
Next, we're going to have Mike Miller give us some of his thoughts. He's the class of 1970, but Mike, I think you're going to cover a couple of years here.
All righty, thank you, Mike. First thing, the class of 70, which we all arrived in 1966, our pledge class numbered 28 brothers. By 1970, we were down to 22, but we graduated to 22 out of the 28 brothers that pledged. I'm just going to take 1 minute to read the names, just for your memory. Tom Bartholet, 6 of us are here today, by the way. Dave Bingham, Mike Beeler, Dave Coleman, Tim Copeland, Dean Crothers, Mike Elliott, Bob Gibo, Jerry Giles, Ken Grimm, who's here, Jim Hansen, Art Johnson, Mark Johnson, Mike Johnson, we had a lot of Johnsons, Philip Johnson, who we lost this last year, and we have some information back there on Phil. Dennis Kanzler, Charles Nober, Tom Logston, Mike Miller, yours truly, Marv Monty, Don Palmer, Mike Roswell here, Jan Schultz, Gordon Skugel, Ed Shaw, Tom Shining, John Seamers, and Tim Sonicson. So those are some names that I'm sure you remember from your years there at WSU. I was able to find 18 members where I had information on their careers after they left WSU. 5 of the brothers were engineers, 3 were teachers, 2, Mr. Copeland and I, were bankers, 2 law enforcement, and that was Jim Hansen and Bob Gibo. Jim was with the Spokane County Sheriff's Department for years, Bob Gibo with the Seattle Police Department. Later on in their careers, they were in the HIT unit, which was a division of the State Attorney General's office, and they helped with homicide investigations at small towns in both western and eastern Washington. We had 1 physician, Dean Crothers, 1 dentist, where's Mike Beeler? Alrighty. 1 journalist, 1 restaurant owner, which was Dave Bingham, who owned Johnny's Dock in Tacoma, and 1 commercial appraiser. Some information on WSU back in the 70s. In 1970, the enrollment at WSU was 15,000. Today, it's 29,600. The WSU president took over in 1967, so covered, I think, all the classes that are here today, and that was President Glenn Terrell. And Glenn was at WSU for 18 years. He retired in Sequim, Washington, and passed away at the age of 93. But Dr. Terrell had a real challenge when he was at WSU, as all of us know. We had a lot of turmoil on campus, and I've got a picture to kind of depict that. This picture, to me, kind of depicted some of the turmoil that went on. We had the Vietnam War going on. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination occurred, I think, in our sophomore year, which created some additional turmoil. But it was a challenging time, and Dr. Terrell, being a new president in '67, handled that, I think, with great poise and did a great job. But he was there for 18 years. We had a great basketball team during that period of time. This is Rick Erickson going up for a shot. We finished second at least 3, if not 4 of the years when we were there, class of 70. We see Henry Bippy there at the bottom. UCLA won the national championship almost every year, but they certainly won the Pac-8 at the time championship. This particular year, 1970, they went 20-2 and won the national championship, but we only lost 72-70 to them in this game in Pullman, and we were 19-7 that year. So great basketball while we were there. Most of us that are here know that today it's the Adams Mall. When we were there, it was the Adams Elementary, surrounded by Greek Road. How many times do you remember going to your 8 o'clock class? And here we were going this way, and here were the, kindergarten through 6th graders coming into class to start their day too. So I thought that picture was kind of fun and reminds us of who our neighbors were. I'm going to ask Mike Beeler to just expound on this picture that I took from the Chinook of a group that Mike was involved in and became the, well, I'm going to let Mike talk about it.
That was the Intercollegiate Knights. We were a service honorarian on campus. Rang the victory bell every time we won a game, which was frequently in those days. I was elected president, was called the National King, who was the national president for the Intercollegiate Knights. And my wife still objects to the fact, doesn't know how I made this, but I took off for 2 weeks when Sonningson and I lived in the apartments. I took off and traveled to all the chapters during the school year. But you have to understand, I got early acceptance to UW Dental School, so I really didn't give a rip at that point in time about grades. Yeah, it was a done deal for me. I told her, sort of like graduating from junior high at that time, you were going to still have another 4 years to go. But those are some fun times, and it's interesting, the vice president of the Intercollegiate Knights was from College of Idaho, David Thorner. And David Thorner and I both ended up in Yakima. He was a malpractice defense attorney for physicians and dentists in the area. But he was our vice president, and we ended up, we're still good friends. His son is my business attorney to this day. His daughter just graduated from high school, as a matter of fact, so we're several generations down. But those are some good times.
Good. Thank you, Mike. This was the Alan Bradley Band. Where's Charlie Tuna? All right. Chuck Tuna, Mr. Tuna, bought us Alan Bradley painting hats, I believe is what they were. This particular evening, he was the lead singer. Jan Schultz and I were on guitar. Jim Hansen on the drums, and I think that might have been Mike Hamilton in the background with the weight on. So we entertained the brothers at every break in the evening when we were there. Question: what event occurred on April 4th, 1970 on the WSU campus? Fairly significant event happened. Mr. Thorson.
The stadium part.
What was that?
The stadium caught fire.
Like,
We didn't do it.
there it is. That's the event on April 4th, 1970 at Rogers Field. It was not Martin Stadium at that particular time, but it burned down the west side. So we had football games after we were there for the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 years until Martin Stadium was totally rebuilt. Good news, bad news. Bad news, it burned down. The good news is we got a new west side on the stadium and an improvement where they removed the track and added additional seats. But it was arson and a lot of, it was just an addition of a lot of turmoil that went on in our 4 years. All right, I'm going to close with one item here. One significant event in my college career occurred in May 1970 as the school year was ending and the university was experiencing significant strife. President Terrell offered students the option to what? Take their current grades and not take finals. How many of you took advantage of that? Oh yeah. My grade point was a 3.5. I'd never had a 3.5 before. And I was not going to risk that grade point. And plus I had a job waiting, and that 3.5 helped me get involved in the banking business. So anyway, memories from the 70s.
We're going to move to the second part of our program now, and you've heard a good explanation from 3 members about their experiences between 1966 and 1970. Last year, or 3 years ago though, when we were in Spokane for 2019, the subject of the recolonization of the chapter came up, and for a lot of us who attended that event, we didn't know that the house had been closed. But it had been closed in 2016, and here it was 2019. And Bruce referred to it, and I wanted to show you that clip.
So I texted Casey and I said, give me some information. I want to share something with the people here. So I'm going to read through what he said. Of course, we know that the chapter has been revoked. There's no DU on WSU campus. It's a 5-year term that we're serving right now. The alumni have been attending the international conferences every summer, because when the 5 years is up, they want to have a presence and be able to recolonize. They figure by having them at the international, it'll help in the recolonization effort. Well, we all kind of believe in DU and what they were teaching, and hopefully we can have a DU chapter of Washington State again.
So that was the introduction to the recolonization that we learned of 3 years ago. The Casey that he referred to is Casey Whitcomb, and Casey was the treasurer of the Alumni Association, still is. And so we reached out to him, and we also and to Tim Nygaard, who's the president of the Alumni Association. Tim graduated from Washington State in 2010. He lives in Portland, and he's a manager of Nike at its global headquarters. And Casey is lives in the Seattle area. He graduated in 2014. He's an accountant for Amazon, and he's the guy that keeps track of all your Kindle devices, how many there are and where they are and what you're doing. And so we're going to invite Tim and Casey to come up and give the first part of 2 parts that they're really going to do, and basically talk to us what happened when the chapter closed in 2016, before the recolonization, or up to the point where the recolonization really started. So if you would, please welcome Tim Nygaard and Casey Whitcomb.
All right. Thank you, Tim, for the wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Nygaard. I'm the president of the WSU Delta Upsilon Alumni Association. And with me today is my treasurer, Casey Whitcomb. And we've got a few slides to share with you to talk about the story leading up to the closure, as Tim explained. Our mission as the alumni board is pretty simple. It's to preserve the fraternal identity and assets for the Washington State Delta Upsilon chapter, and to provide ongoing support and assistance to its current undergraduate students. Okay, we currently have 4 active alumni board members right now. So myself, Casey, and 2 others that couldn't be with us today. But in total, we have 35 years of volunteer experience serving on this board. We're just going to share a little bit about what DU looked like when we were on campus. So I graduated in 2010. Mark Loricella, who couldn't be with us today, he graduated in 97, and he's down here in the bottom left, and he's been pivotal in serving our board with property management and facility upkeep. So this is what the house looked like when Casey and I were at Washington State and living in the house. When I joined Delta Upsilon in 2006, we had about 20 members. There were only 2 people living on the 2nd floor of the house. And my pledge class represented the largest pledge class of 12. We had about 12 of us since the house reopened in 2001. 2008, we had about a membership size of 45. We were just finding our fit on campus. We had decent grades. We didn't have any tier restrictions, and the chapter was maturing at that point. Recruitment was strong for us. The reputation was good. And that continued through the years leading up to 2014, where our membership size grew to 70, and that's the year of when Casey graduated. Still with strong recruitment, academics, GPA kind of faltered a little bit. But then that takes us up to 2016, and DU exploded in growth at Washington State. We had a membership size of about 107 before the chapter closed. Despite active alumni involvement, the chapter body just became unstable because there was too much going on. As we are all aware, there was an investigation because of certain allegations, which unfortunately resulted in the WSU Conduct Board issuing an official loss of recognition in fall of 2016. What that meant for the current DU members was that the chapter house ceased all operations, and the alumni board had to issue notice of eviction for all of its tenants and membership at that point. When I went to the campus in December of 2017, the house was thoroughly disrespected. There were a lot of emotions that had been taken out on the physical property, and it was a really sad state of affairs. These are some of the photos I took when we had to go there and secure our property. This photo on the left is on the first floor sleeping porch, looking out over Adams Mall. You may not notice, but the window is completely broken. There were several windows broken. The damage was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was basically like a landfill inside. Everything was destroyed, and absolute zero disregard for what Delta Upsilon stood for. These are some photos of the bathroom, even down to the toilets. That middle photo is above the shower. Well, we had damages everywhere, in every crack, in every corner of the house. Even the shower heads were taken off from the shower stalls. We didn't have any shower heads, down to every last bit stripped of what DU stood for up until that time. What was the alumni board's involvement with the chapter closure? Well, there were so many investigations and providing support with information, and between the international fraternity that conducted their own investigation, the university and the student conduct board, concerned parents, concerned members, and really just trying to ensure that we were taking the steps necessary to, again, secure our fraternal assets and property, and that was the first step. So that's what prompted our trip to 815 Ruby that December. It was snowing there, by the way, and we were trying to move composites, and we had to rent a moving van, and the moving van actually got stuck on the hill because it snowed a half a foot in the time that we were moving things out of the house into this moving van and into a secure off-site storage. We bolted up, or we hammered pieces of plywood over the broken windows, and up to that point, it was just pick up any trash that you possibly can. And it was just a few of us at that house, but did whatever we can. From the financial perspective, we were super concerned about the solvency here. There were, up to that point, we had a strong membership, and our operating budget was fully supported by the students that were living in the house. That all immediately went away, and we still had bills to pay. Right? So we were about 6 months away from filing bankruptcy as an alumni association. But thankfully, due to some creative thought and a little bit of luck, we were able to source new tenants and commit to a contract for the next 4 years with new tenants moving into the fraternity house. We also enlisted the help of on-campus property management to help us coordinate a lot of the repairs that were going to be necessary, because we needed tenants in as soon as possible. We were counting on that full year, but the house remained vacant through the spring semester, through the summer, and then the new tenants moved in the following fall. So the property cleanup and the repairs completed through that spring. These are some of the photos of the work that was done to restore order to the house and to make sure that there wasn't an ounce of damage for the new tenants. So there were a lot of projects that were taken on in this period of time, and they were quite costly to us as an alumni association to fund. Here's some pictures of the hallways. You saw the other hallway, you could barely recognize it. Now it looks a little bit more like the hallway we all are familiar with. Foyer, bathroom, the house from the outside here, the kitchen. Basically, our job was to make sure that the tenants were going to be happy with accepting this property upon move-in, and we were the ones coordinating that transition with them. Here's a couple more photos of what the downstairs looked like after all the repairs and all the trash was removed, and all the graffiti and all of the problems. So that's where I'll leave it for now. And I think next is a video. I'll pass it back to you, Tim, and be back up.
4 months ago, Mike Miller and Doug Kerr and I went to the chapter house. It had been the first time I'd been to the chapter house, Tim, since I graduated in about 112 years ago. And we were amazed that the house was in good a shape as it is. And so thank you to you and Casey and your fellow alumni board members, because I'd never seen those pictures before. And it just an amazing job you guys have done in bringing it back from the brink. So thank you very much for your help. So the story then continues on from 2017 to about 2021, when the international fraternity thought that the time was right, because of the leadership really that the Alumni Association had shown, to try to recolonize the organization. And they sent out 2 leadership consultants, Blake Cohn and his associate Matthew Talley. And they spent nearly a year on the campus, a fair amount of that time living in the U house, because the fraternity that had leased it for 3 years had moved out of the house by then. And they spent a lot of time on campus in terms of recolonizing it. Blake wasn't able to come, but he was able to provide us with a Zoom video that explains what he and Matt did starting a year ago. And I'd like to show that to you now.
So my name is Blake Cohen. I am a graduate from Bradley University back in December of 2019. Was able to come on staff shortly within around a year and a half after graduating, about 2 years. COVID obviously took away some job positions and everything else like that, but very fortunate to have the opportunity to work for staff and to give back to the fraternity that gave me so much during my undergrad years. During my time on staff, within the first couple months, I was informed that I would be the lead expansion consultant for Washington State University. And in doing so, I went through and did a lot of research in terms of what does the campus culture look like? What is our history within WSU? And how are we going to approach our recolonization here at this university? And that being said, going through and seeing some of the prominent alumni that have came through, the very rich history that the chapter has within Washington State, it was something that I knew that this was something that is going to be very important to not only our international headquarters, but also the alumni at Washington State. And in doing so, I was partnered with another fellow leadership consultant whose name is Matthew Talley. Matthew Talley comes from University of Maryland, who graduated about a year after I did. And we were both able to go into Pullman and set up shop. We actually lived out of the chapter house for the first semester. Quite the experience. We're able to have a nice full house by ourselves. Would have loved for some furniture, but things are the way they are. And so when we first got to campus, we did a lot of, developing some relationships with the staff, predominantly fraternity and sorority life offices, and really being able to get the resources that we need to help get this recolonization kicked off and be the most successful that it could be. After that, we went ahead and started gathering names, doing tabling on campus, most of that tabling being done in the student union building, the Cub. And in doing so, we got a lot of different names coming through there, really got our name out, talked to different organizations. And believe it or not, we had a lot of good support from other fraternities on campus, and especially sororities on campus. The main portion of where we got our names from was sorority presentations. And what Matt and I did was we would go in, buy flowers, have a card, and we went and introduced ourselves to all the sororities, and we asked them if we could have anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes of their time during one of their meetings to introduce ourselves, talk about what we're here to do, and address any questions that they may have. In doing so, we also asked them for any recommendations of a college male that is not already in a Greek organization on campus that they thought would fit the best principles and needs that we had presented to them today of our fraternity. And that was probably one of the biggest successes that we had in terms of recruiting men. And in doing so, we got a lot of well-diverse young men that were very eager to be part of a Founding Fathers experience. And the way we marketed this experience was that you were able to start something that most people don't have a chance to do. A lot of times when you come in and join in a Greek organization, it's already been established, you have all the resources, and you just get to kind of reap the benefits and rewards right from the get-go. But with the Founding Father experience and restarting a chapter, you have the opportunities to really diversify yourself in terms of a leadership opportunity, being sure that your time management is down to a T, because it does take work to start a chapter. And I think these gentlemen that we have recruited decided that this was something that they wanted to do. And they wanted to be able to make a difference, not only in the Greek culture at Washington State, but also make a difference with them themselves and showing that they could do this. And I think these young men are going to have a lot of great potential within their leadership. They have a long way to go. I think them being able to be moving into the house is going to fully diversify themselves and also let them become even more involved, because it's going to be that safe place and that common ground for them to all conform and to be able to hang out and bond with each other, because that's what a brotherhood is all about. Being able to bond with each other, create those memories. And that's why this house is also so important for these guys. And then going through the really recolonization efforts, we went through and selected a executive board through an interview process, which is very common for all of our recolonizations, in terms where Matt and I and our supervisor, Hayden Ron, went through and interviewed individuals that were interested in leadership positions. And through those interviews, we selected who would best fit each position. Many of those individuals within the chapter chose anywhere between 1 to 3 different positions that they would like to see. And we placed them in the ones that we thought they would fit best. Going forward, these positions will be put to a vote among the rest of the chapter members. But in doing so with those interviews, it's a little hard to be able to go through and vote on everyone when you're still kind of figuring out who exactly they are and who's in the chapter with you. And after going through and doing that, we started getting a lot of the logistical side done, getting a judiciary board set up, overviewing the constitution and bylaws for the chapter, setting groundwork for how are we going to shape the image of this chapter. And what we kind of came to a consensus on in terms of the image of this chapter within Washington State University is being the ones who start the change. As many of you know, Washington State's Greek system is successful, but at the same time, it is toxic. It does have its ups and downs in terms of the different types of social atmosphere that goes on. There have been many unfortunate events that have happened at Washington State University. And one thing that I wanted this chapter to do was to be able to start that culture change. Be the individuals that were able to be involved with everything. Be the individuals that had that strong relationship with not only other Greek organizations, but students outside of the Greek organizations and the rest of staff on campus as well. Being those men that start the change can make a difference at that campus. And our overall motto for this chapter is to be the DU gentleman. And they have already done so, and being gentlemen to sororities, being gentlemen to other individuals on campus, and even to each other. And that's what I want this chapter to continue down that path, is being the leaders in change and the gentlemen that they are meant to be on campus. That being said, there's still a lot of work to do within the chapter. One of those things being recruitment. The recruitment is going to be a lot better this coming fall semester with them having the house and having some renovations done within the house. The support between the advisory board and their housing board is going to be very important for them within the coming semester. And I really hope that while I will still be working with the chapter, that we all can establish great relationships with each other and to help ensure the success of the Washington State chapter and to be able to see the men of DU thrive for years and years to come. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.
So that was Blake Cohn, and Mike Miller, Doug Kerr, and I had the opportunity to meet him this spring. And again, we're tremendously impressed with the work that Blake and Matt had done in terms of their recolonization efforts. We also had the opportunity to meet the executive committee of the new group that had been brought together. I believe the number is 23 young men have pledged to be involved in the colony. And we met the executive board. We have two people on the executive board that are going to be talking with us next. Dominic Kramer is from the class of 2025. Dominic is from Covington, Washington, and he's a nursing major. And he's the vice president of new member education. We tried to figure out what the heck is a vice president of new member education. That's what we used to call a pledge trainer. And now they call him vice president for new member education. And he's accompanied by Devin Norton. Devin is from Boston, and he's a criminal justice major. He too is going to graduate in the class of 2025. He's the chapter's vice president of recruitment. Can you guess what we called it? Rush Chairman. Yeah, that's what he does. So what I'd like you to do is welcome Dominic and Devin, and they're going to give us an overview of basically where the organization, where the chapter is now. So Devin, Dominic, come on up, please.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Devin Norton, and I'm the VP of Recruitment for Delta Upsilon at Washington State. First off, I just want to thank all of you for having both Dominic and I here today. We're all very honored to be here with you all today, so thank you for that. I was first approached by Delta Upsilon during the fall of 2021, so last year, during my freshman year. At the time, the recolonization effort was spearheaded by Blake Cohn and Matthew Talley, as we just heard. I messaged Blake out of the blue, and we met up the next day, and I was just hooked from our very first conversation. He really pitched to me these ideas of just a strong brotherhood like no other, really, and the ability to change the Greek culture and just make a difference at Washington State and really just abroad. So the executive board was formed shortly thereafter in October of that same year. And from there, we kind of just got the ball rolling, setting the bylaws, our constitution, just getting to know the rest of the guys in the chapter. It was a little bit slow for a few months there. The real turning point was in February of this year when we attended the Regional Leadership Academy in Portland, Oregon. There, each exec member attended specific workshops for our own respective positions. I was actually coached by Blake, so I spent about 6-7 hours in a room just listening to Blake talk about recruitment. It was a great opportunity. I learned everything I know about recruitment from that, and I think Dominic and a lot of the other exec board can attest to that for their own positions as well. At that academy, we came up with both short and long-term goals for the rest of the chapter. So upon our arrival back in Pullman, we pitched these to the guys. They loved that, and we started implementing some new things. And from there, everything began to move really quick. All the guys began to spend pretty much all of our free time with one another, working on homework, watching sports, really anything. And we all got very close as a result in those 3 months. And I can truly say some of them are my brothers for life, and I know for a fact that in the house next semester we'll just continue to grow closer together. So one of my responsibilities as Vice President of Recruitment involves overseeing a recruitment committee. So that's made up of 5 brothers, including myself, and we basically just deal with everything that there is to do with recruitment. We've been working relentlessly and tirelessly over the last few months, creating a solid goal for Fall Rush in the next few months. And it's been a lot of work. We set what is admittedly an ambitious, yet very obtainable goal of bringing in 35 new guys in the fall. And I have no doubt that with my committee and the rest of the chapter, that we'll be able to pull that off and really just kind of do what Delta Upsilon is meant to do and create that brotherhood and change the culture of Greek life. Over the next 3 years, during my time at WSU, I would like to remain involved in recruitment, maybe from a mentor standpoint, or take on a bigger role in the chapter itself. I think, we're in a really unique position right now. All of the guys currently in the chapter were founding fathers. So, we have a lot of pride in that title, and everyone there is committed to making sure that Delta Upsilon is around for generations to come. And listening to all the stories from you all here tonight, it's been very inspiring to me personally, and I'm sure Dominic as well. I would like to come back years down the line and do something like this with my brothers. So thank you guys.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominic Kramer. I'm the Vice President of New Member Education, and so I was here to talk about kind of like how the new members created the chapter and everything, and I tried writing a speech, but it was too wordy, and so I go off the cuff, be authentic, which is something that we at DU have tried to really be. So I'm going to tell a couple stories. So one of our more prominent members, our VP of Finance, joined the chapter like that. So Blake Cohen was at a table, said, "Hey, do you wanna join the fraternity?" He just said yes, and he said, "Wait, do you wanna think about it a minute?" He said, "No, I'm good. I'll sign it right now." And then we had people join because I nagged them, my friends who are on the same floor, Stevenson. I nagged them to join, and they joined. So we've got a good bunch of guys from all different backgrounds and bringing different things to the table, and like Devin said, it started off pretty slow. At the beginning, you're meeting once a week. You don't really know these people. They're all strangers. We had a group chat, talking to each other, but nothing really got the ball rolling. The friend groups were the friend groups. And then in January, we come back, and Blake basically just says, "Hey, here you go. Here's the chapter. I'll be here for 2 more weeks." And so us as an exec board, we really had to try and figure out what we wanted to be as a chapter and as a unit. And so we were really struggling with creating that culture that we wanted and what people wanted DU to be at WSU. And so then we had RLA, and we had all our goals set up, and one of those goals was having 3 brotherhood events a week, which as the person in charge of that was very challenging, especially in the middle of the school year. Didn't have anything to plan it out. So we really did that, and we got a really close-knit group of guys, and I'm honestly so thankful I took this position because I was in charge of, getting everyone up to date on the history of DU, getting excited for the chapter, getting to know one another, and it's been really great. And the things we wanted to be DU gentlemen. We wanted to be the ones that people look, when they thought of fraternity life, they thought of us, thought it was a good thing. We didn't want to think they were someone else and just partied all the time and had bad grades and didn't show up to class. And we wanted to stay authentic. We didn't want to be anything we weren't. So we really tried to get everyone's consensus on what we wanted to be and see how we could be us in our most genuine way. Another thing I came here to talk to you guys about was the house and how that's going along in the short term. Right now we're getting a lot of furniture. We're all really excited to be there, and how the living situation is going to be. It's going to probably be a little bit of growing pains, learning how to live in a house. So we'll probably take as much advice from you guys as possible, as long as it's good advice. But yeah, from what it sounds like, we're going to be doing a lot of our bigger changes in the next couple years as membership starts to grow and we start to accumulate some money. So that'll be fun. And I'm excited to be part of DU from now into the future. Like Devin said, we're really hoping that DU, we can create a good enough culture so that it stays around for many, many years to come. So thank you guys.
Before we sit down, do you mind if Dominic and I just take a selfie with all of you in the background? No, no one has to move. Just.
We gotta figure out. You got the one? There we go. Down one. All right. Thank you guys. All right.
Thank you, fellas. With young men like you, we've got a great future. We hear, a lot of negative in the news about the Greek system, period. And actually, I think the Greek system at WSU has a lot of positive things going on. And Dan Welter is here to tell us about it. He's the director of their fraternity and sorority life for Washington State University. So, Dan, it's yours.
Awesome. Okay, first, thank you all for making the time to come here. Every time I get to meet with our chapters, with our alumni, I'm thrilled. A little bit of a story about me, that this is just sort of hearkening back. I was an undergrad at the University of New England. Picture it. Tiny school, really a blip on the map, but nursing school, you might have heard of it. It was a big medical school. Boston. It's all connected. Anyhow, so I'm a brother of Delta Lambda Phi fraternity, which is also this big. We have 15 chapters nationwide. But I was actually a refounding brother for my class. As a pledge class of 4 human beings, me and 3 brothers. And just hearing the story and like deciding what are we going to do with our future? How do we recover from this? How do we learn from our mistakes of our past? I think is really powerful. And I think what you guys are doing as undergrads is really important. But what you all are doing as alumni is also really important in sharing. Like, we were the first class who lived in that house. And we built what you're doing and what you're living in and what you're seeing now. And I think there's a lot of power to that. And so keep sharing those stories. I want to encourage that so very much. On each of your tables is hopefully this groovy little sheet here. And that has a lot of the 411 information that normally I would just like sit up here and bark at you and be like, guess what? We've got some really impressive numbers. While I think that's really great to share, I want to keep this a little bit more focused down to like what's going on with Delta Upsilon on our campus and how does it measure up with our other chapters. Where did I start with Delta Upsilon? My first day working at WSU was November 26th, 2016. Yeah, I heard the oh no's. The first email that I had to write as the director of fraternity and sorority life was an email to every parent of that 107 guys who lived in this chapter facility. And I was like, what did I get into and why did I take this job? Like, how did this even happen? And like, I hadn't been here for the conduct history of it. I didn't even know what happened. All I knew is that I was emailing 100 parents saying, you're gonna need to find a new place to live. Like, and here's a housing thing. Luckily, it has gotten so much better since then. Our relationship with Delta Upsilon, we have worked with your headquarters, with your alumni groups to figure out how do we continue to grow this? How do we build this back and build it back better? And what we found actually is that you're coming back to a stronger community. You're coming back to a healthier and safer community than you left, which I think are all good things. So in 2016, when Delta Upsilon left our campus, we had about 4,300 members that fall. Which is about 24% of our undergraduate community. You're coming back to 4,000, our fall-to-fall numbers, I can't measure same to same, 4,400 members this fall, 27% of our undergrads. And so we're growing that sort of market share of our students who are involved in fraternities and sororities. And so your guys are coming back into a space where you can throw up those recruitment numbers of 30, 35 guys. We're anticipating the largest recruitment we've ever seen this fall with more than 750 guys registering. And so, yeah, you're like, oh, how do we go recruit that? We'll talk, don't worry. There's really opportunity there. Our academic success is still really, really impressive. We're seeing that average GPA fall, landing in that 2.93, both in 2016 when y'all left, and in 2021 this fall. And so we've maintained those same academic standards, and actually we've improved over spring from 2020 to 2022. Wow, how does that math work out? I don't know. So just, I think it's important for y'all to hear, membership is strong. Our students are coming in at a high caliber, they're performing well, and we're really, really proud and excited for what that means for the survivability, for the objectivity of our chapters, the ability for your chapter to choose the best of the best of the best coming into WSU. I think the other piece that I always like to share, and earlier today, one of y'all, when y'all were talking, said we graduated 22 of our 24 members who started in our new member class. And retention and graduation rates are super important, especially to data nerds like me. Joining a fraternity or sorority actually increases the likelihood that you will graduate by 17% in 4 years and by 15% in 6 years. And so when we're looking at those numbers and we're comparing that with our peers in other spaces and other involvement areas, no one does what fraternity and sorority life does. And there's a lot of research on why that is. Why are people graduating at those higher of a rate? Because of joining fraternities and sororities. I can tell you part of it is that bond of brotherhood, is that connection that you're making with those guys and that time you're spending studying, that time you're spending in brotherhoods where all of a sudden if you're stuck on a math problem, you're like, I really don't understand calculus and why we're solving for things that don't exist. Like, how does that even work? And so making sure that you have those opportunities in those moments, I think, is really, really important. I think understanding where the university as a whole with fraternity and sorority life is really important too. Kirk Schultz, who is our president of the university system, his son is a member of a fraternity, not Delta Upsilon, he's a farmhouse. But we can't fault him for not being perfect. And so Kirk understands the importance and value of fraternity and sorority life. And so I think that's at the very highest level. Our vice president of student affairs, who's like my boss's boss's boss, she's a sorority woman herself. And so when we start looking through the organization, we have folks at critical levels through the institution who understand the importance and value of fraternity and sorority life, and they understand it not only from a perspective of like, oh, here's some places where people can get and connect with each other, but also from that individual, I experienced this, I know it's important level. And so that level of support we have not seen in my all 6 years I've been here. It has not always been like that. These are recent staff changes, recent changes in people's lives that have helped us to gain that perspective at that high level of administration. And that change in perspective has actually helped us. We're on the way to hiring 2 new full-time staff, which, like, for any managers, you know, anytime you get to hire full-time staff is like a thrill in higher education. So we're really excited about that, and I think that shows the university's commitment to fraternity and sorority life. I don't want to spend the whole time up here telling you about all the good things. I think that what you heard from Blake around the quote-unquote toxic culture at WSU, I'm not ready to call it toxic. I wouldn't work in that kind of a space. But there are liabilities. There are things that threaten fraternity and sorority life on our campus. Every person in this room who's a member of Delta Upsilon, I know you guys took an oath of initiation. And in that oath of initiation, it's a public ritual, I love it, I can literally read it all back to you. But in that, you talk about your values of friendship, character, liberal culture, and justice. And I think so long as this organization retains those values, lives those values, we don't have to worry about those liabilities, those issues that are going to cause us to get the negative press. Because all of those values are actually upstanding things. And when we're doing that, we're doing fraternity and sorority life right, my job gets really easy because then I'm just like telling the president, here's all the good reasons why fraternity and sorority life rocks. Instead of saying, and we had these many injuries and this many other things. Yes, we have problems. We threw a set of hands up in the air. Our biggest concern is alcohol and the behaviors that alcohol causes. All of our undergrads know it, and we got to work together to figure out how do we tackle it. I can't stop people from drinking underage. And I think one of the pieces I was asked to specifically talk about is what is the relationship between the university and our organizations. Our relationship is one where we acknowledge that our organizations are separate, independent, privately owned organizations, and that our undergrads, our alumni boards, get to make your own decisions. I will provide you the best advice I can. I will provide you the best guidance and support that I can. At the end of the day, the decision is yours. The mantra that I always use is I can't always be the sage on the stage. Sometimes I have to be the guide by the side. And people make mistakes, and that's okay. We're going to be here. We're going to support each other through it, and we're going to do the best we can. And that's why we've got an incredible liaison model where my staff are ready and willing to meet with the chapter, the undergraduates, and as often as y'all want. we're here, we're ready, we're gonna do it. That's why we have the staff. And so know that. I think we've got a lot of strengths, and I look forward to Delta Upsilon adding and contributing to that, because I think I see greatness in this room. I see a lot of history in this room that tells me you guys have a great past and an even greater future. So, oh wait, who wants to guess how many fraternities there are on campus now if you didn't count already on the back of the page? 26 fraternities right now. So 24 do have chapter facilities. So we have 2 out there that are looking. But 26 chapters on our campus in our fraternity community, 14 sororities in our Panhellenic community, and 14 fraternities and sororities in our culturally based community. So we are actually one of the nation's largest fraternity sorority communities right now. We're on scale. We're the same size as Michigan State University. And so when you think about large higher education institutions, we're bigger than Texas Christian. So we're a very robust community, which is incredible. And I'm so honored to have the opportunity to work with it. So with that, thank you.
And thanks very much. We're going to conclude our conversation about recolonization by asking Casey and Tim to come back. Because here's where we are. We talked about where we've come from 2016 basically up through today. But now I want them to talk to us from their position as alumni board officers as to where they want us to see, where they want to see this organization go in the future. So Tim, Casey, it's yours.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Tim. Delta Upsilon, the return to Washington State, and not just Washington State University. This DU chapter represents the only DU active chapter in the entire Washington State. Our friends over in Seattle don't have that luxury right now. So this is where we're going to take things off with our financial outlook, and we're going to go into the business of what we do. Go ahead, Casey.
Thanks, Tim. All right, so here's where we are as an alumni association looking forward. As we said before, right when we closed down after the updates, before we got tenants, we only had about $30,000 in the bank. You know, that's about just 6 months worth of expenses with no one living there. Once we found the tenants, we've been able to build up our reserves a little bit. Now we've got about $90,000. We've made some updates. And about the Housing Corporation itself, we're a non-profit company. And it's comprised entirely of volunteers. We don't have anybody on a payroll. Because we're a nonprofit company dedicated only to the WSU charter or to the chapter, any money that we do get has to be directly invested into our undergrads in this chapter house itself. And so just so non-secretive, very transparent fraternity, here's just a snapshot of our bank accounts. So just so we're not being insinuating or anything, it's like this is what we have, this is what we're working with, and when you see our goals in the future, you'll know where we stand and what we're asking for. And so what we have right now, there are about 23 members in the house right now. And after being active for only 1 year, I think that is an astounding number. As Tim said before, after they had been active for about 6 or 7 years, his pledge class was the biggest, and they had about 12 people. And so after 1 year, having 23 members already, that is amazing, and that's really good news for us. So here's what we have for a whole year's worth of our operating expenses given 23 members. A lot of these are estimates, a lot of these are coming from our property management company. And so far in the back, you might need binoculars to see it, but this is what we have going so far. It's about $300,000 per year of operating expenses. We estimate that we need about 31 members in the house in order to break even. And this $300,000 doesn't include special projects, renovations. It includes things like maintenance, repairs, inspections, keeping the lights on essentially. Food is still our biggest expense item. It's going to be about $150,000 that we estimate once we get to 45 members. And you're thinking like, well, why don't we increase the dues? Why don't we break even right now? And the idea is that we don't want to capitalize on our membership starting out. We want to build it up in the future. And we're a nonprofit company. We're not here to try and extract as much money as we can from our undergrads. We want them to live comfortably. We don't want them to take out as many student loans as they possibly can. And so as a nonprofit, we're going to operate like a nonprofit. We're going to rely on donations. We're going to rely on just our normal day business to keep our lights on and keep going here. And so here's just some ideas for projects that we have, things that we completed in the past, things that we have coming up. So we put a lot of money into the house in the years before it shut down. We had remodels all around the house, downstairs women's bathroom, the foyer, windows, new siding on the house, new roof, new carpets, interior paints. And so that's what we're working with right now. However, we still have a lot of projects that have to be done. And so those things like the bathroom plumbing, it's still the original plumbing in the house from when it was built 50 years ago, I think.
And a fun story about that original plumbing. Let's see, it was 2015. A pipe burst in the second story bathroom.
Yeah.
A pipe burst and leaked sewage, fun enough, all the way down through the first floor into the kitchen. And so that was a very gnarly repair, very expensive too. But you know, we have a risk with the original infrastructure, and so you know we're doing our best to plan these large projects. That alone is you know, bathroom plumbing throughout the entire house, all the way down to the kitchen is going to be a large undertaking.
Yeah, and because it's an old house and we're just getting into it, we're looking to get things done. We didn't want to do these when we had tenants just renting. Now we have membership. The community is growing. The brotherhood is growing. Now's the time for us to start digging in and get some of these projects done. So we have other ideas for what we need. You know, we need new floors in the kitchen. We need new floors in the dining room. Our boilers to keep the house heated are getting pretty old right now too. That's a pretty large replacement. We're also looking to update the property fence. So Fijis keep on breaking down, or as they stop breaking down our fence panels. And we're also looking to upgrade our appliances, a laundry room, just make things and quality of life better for our undergrads. They're starting out there. We want to give them some nice amenities, make them feel comfortable in a new house.
And with that, you know, that is just the basics, right, of what we're dealing with when it comes to the property and just trying to maintain a comfortable standard of life for the house. This is a separate list that came from the undergrads when we asked them, well, brainstorm some ideas and come to us as an alumni association with things that would excite you. And this is the list that they came back with. For example, letters on the side of the house, glowing lit up. Well, that's actually something that we thought was really cool, and we want to make sure that the entire campus realizes DU is back in the neighborhood, and we're going to have brilliant letters. They're going to be all lit up on full display, you know, really proving that the identity still is on campus. A gaming room, pool table, inclusive of ping pong as well. Room furnishings, just room furnishings. Like, yes, we are giving you room furnishings. It'll be okay. Big TV above the fireplace, barbecue, fire pit, flagpole, speakers in the movie room, couches, basketball hoop, bar stool. I mean, things, you know, that would add to the character of the DU house, because right now it's empty inside. We're starting to furnish it with, you know, some you know, needed couches, chairs, dining tables, but it's just the basics, and these things are very expensive for us. You saw our bank account right now, and we're already operating in the deficit until we hit that break-even point through the next year. That brings me to, what are the long-term goals for us as an alumni association? Well, first, we need to create a capital reserve fund that's going to be dedicated to what I'm about to dive into with you right now. Up to this point, our funds have, and our income and revenue has been generated from our tenants, and we've managed the funds as responsibly as we can, but still, we're very conservative with the projects that we're taking on, because we want to enable the house to be open in the first place. So a capital reserve fund that, and we're thinking in the multi-million-dollar range here that would contribute to the last goal. But first, establishing a tenured alumni board. You know that there's 4 of us serving on the alumni board right now, and we're managing all aspects of advisory, so making sure that the current undergraduate students have the guidance and counsel necessary to understand what fraternity chapter operations need to be, and forming that relationship with us so we can plan our budget, we can make sure that everything is working in synchronization. between what's actually happening at 815 Ruby and those of us that are working remotely on the alumni board. Right now, we have the housing corporation side and we have the advisory side. Before DU got the loss of recognition, we had about 13 volunteers serving in various roles on these alumni boards. And it was a well-oiled machine at that point, but we can do much better when it comes to managing communication, let's say, from a consistent network where there's updates that are shared, they're available, they're accessible to everyone across all the different generations that is interested in keeping in touch with DU at Washington State. That would require someone to put together those publishings or those communications. And right now we're operating with just a few of us volunteers, and we don't have the bandwidth right now to do what we want, but this is one of our long-term goals. Also, we want to make sure that we're connecting the expanded network through events like this one that are engaging, that people are excited about, that we can come together and continue to share in the brotherhood that we were all initiated into. And also supporting the efforts that are required by the chapter to receive top-tier recognition on campus and be highly ranked by the international fraternity. I think we're already off to a wonderful start. It wasn't shared yet, but I want to congratulate these students for achieving a 3.1 house chapter GPA. That is phenomenal. Great work. What's that?
6th overall.
6th overall out of 26 fraternities on campus. That's and an average GPA of 3.16 or something. So we're above the average. You guys did a phenomenal job. We're going to continue focusing on scholarship. As the alumni board, we want to reward and provide incentives to performance like that. I think actually I can definitively say in the 10 years I've served on the alumni board, that is the highest class or chapter GPA that has been achieved in the last decade. So congratulations to you guys. Let's keep it up. Achieving this top tier recognition is not only on scholarship. There's philanthropy. There's a lot that rolls up into the reputation of what makes a chapter really worthwhile from the perspective of a P&M to join. And we've talked a lot about recruitment today because we're at the starting point of rebuilding, and recruitment is critical for us to keep the doors open at 815 Ruby Street in Pullman. So, you know, the faster we can get and stay at the top of the list when it comes to academics, when it comes to service hours, when it comes to the culture of what makes a DU man and holding our values, I think it's just gonna be a very positive trajectory for us to come. So that leads me to my last long-term goal, which is to plan and execute a multi-million-dollar housing renovation. This is a very long-term goal, and it's a vision. We want DU to be one of the most recognized chapters on campus, and in order to do that, we need a house that's going to support larger operations. Right now, anyone guess what our capacity is internal to the house? What was capacity back in the 70s? 64. Our fire, the fire marshal in Pullman says we are limited to 39? 30. It is less than half. Now, how are we going to achieve top tier recognition if we can't, if we are limited to that amount of men in the house? We have one of the largest lot sizes on all of Greek Row in terms of property, right? You saw the picture I shared of the backyard looking towards the back of the house. We have a great backyard space, but that's an opportunity to expand and have more rooms, more common areas. Again, keep DU on campus in a different way. I'm going to share this next photo I'm going to share is of a brother chapter from Iowa State, and it is a marvel in terms of the architecture. But this is something that I would aspire to DU to have. It's a beautiful house at Iowa State, And the DU men there they're incredibly proud of the work that their alumni have done to contribute to this house. There's character, there's different common areas that contribute to the identity of the DU chapter at Iowa State. Talking to our brothers at Iowa State, they're very proud, right, that the house doesn't represent the fraternity, or the house doesn't make the chapter per se, but it definitely contributes to their ability to get more out of the fraternity. So again, we're not there yet, but dealing with our current housing capacity, we're thinking long term of how can we sustain and how can we keep the growth up. So how can you help? Let's start with just celebrating that, there's this many attendees here in Walla Walla, and I think it's really a tribute to the fact that this DU brotherhood is still thriving decades later. And so let's just have a great time, enjoy, and share stories. Casey and I are here representing our board, and we'd love your feedback on ideas that would take DU to the next level. Life looks similar, but perhaps a little different at Washington State for DU right now, and as we are opening the doors than perhaps it did in your time. Maybe there are different challenges that we're working with, but we'd love your feedback on ideas for, again, how we might be able to achieve some of these goals. I encourage you to connect with our current students here and talk to them, get to know them. These are the founding fathers, and it's really exciting that they're here today. So I encourage you to go up and have a conversation. Tomorrow, be on the lookout for candidates that might be able to serve or contribute to our alumni board. What Casey and I do, besides balancing full-time jobs and families, is we're on conference calls with DU, whether that's with international fraternity, whether that's with Washington State, whether that's with property management, whether that's with our accountants. It's a full-time job, and we could use a lot of help. So if you know anyone that is willing to serve and give back and make sure that we have an active alumni presence, please tell them to get in touch with me. And again, engage with others, share the story of what's happening, and if you return to Washington State, go knock on the door and take a tour of the house and be proud that we're here again. Perhaps consider donating to our operating expense budget. You see, in today's day and age, things are expensive. We've talked about inflation. We've talked, you've heard these things in the media, right? Well, did you know that just for 23 men, it costs $300,000 a year to keep the lights on? We're also, doing our best to make sure. I've talked a little bit about the international fraternity, and Blake represents the international fraternity as an employee of theirs. But from the alumni perspective, we fund trips and travel for international fraternity conferences. So there are 3 major conferences that are held annually, and we send students. This year we're sending 7, I believe, 7 students, inclusive of airfare, accommodations, and at these conferences around the country. So that's, we're trying to give our students the best opportunity to enjoy and get the most out of their DU experience as early as possible. So again, Casey accepts any forms of donations, even if you got an extra couch and you live somewhere close to Pullman, we're in need. With that, I'd like to thank you for your brotherhood and support, and Tim and the Mikes for allowing us to be here today and share a little bit of this story. And this was a photo that was taken in 2015 of myself and some of our other alumni advisors that we had at the time at the Leadership Institute conference that was held outside of Phoenix, Arizona that year. DU at Washington State received quite a bit of recognition for awards, purely in growth. As you saw some of those metrics from before, the international fraternity was just, WSU, the chapter was actually one of the top tiers in chapters across the country when it came to the membership size. So this is the contact information if you'd like to get in touch and with us on the alumni board. I put Mark's contact information there, and so that's his mobile phone and the email. If you have any feedback, he's our main point of contact, and he'll cascade it to the rest of us. So thank you very much.
Tim, Casey, thanks so much. To wrap this thing up, I think I would invite you to all give a final hand to all of the speakers today. I think you've heard some amazing stories, past, present, and future, about Delta Upsilon, and let's congratulate all the speakers for jobs very well done.